I revisited Fantastic Four, I even skipped ahead and read Secret Wars, but now it's time to go back to the linchpin of it all and revisit Jonathan Hickman's Avengers. Woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and we're back with another video. Written by Jonathan Hickman and illustrated by a plethora of artists, the first issue in this Avengers saga was published by Marvel Comics in December of 2012, with the run ending at issue 44 in April of 2015. And the Avengers need to evolve. With the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy resting on their shoulders, it will cause new members to join and the Illuminati to assemble once again. But between Thanos, the Black Priests, and the incursion of every planet line in the future, will they be enough to save the day? Or will they even be able to avenge it? I'm not going to be doing a full art section for this one because it varied so wildly over the course of this run, and also the majority of this video is going to be voiceover because I'm still not feeling 100%. But what I will say about the art is that there's so many different styles in this book that there's bound to be one that you really click with. For me, I found myself enjoying the art in the first omnibus a lot more than the second. You had the likes of Steve Epstein, Mike Deodato, Jerome Pena, and a few others that I really liked. Early on as well, it was great how the artist on Avengers and the one on New Avengers had such contrasting styles where the Illuminati title felt murky and shadowy, but the main series was bright, bold, and somewhat hopeful. That might be part of the reason why I had such a great time with this book right out of the gate, and I truly believed that this could have been even better than Hickman's Fantastic Four run, which I really enjoyed when I reviewed it a few months ago. And don't get me wrong, the art's never bad in this run, but there were a few styles that I just didn't enjoy as much. I just think for the most part though, that towards the end there were so many different people jumping in and out of it that neither series had a real sense of identity. Sure, you still got some big names and phenomenal styles coming in, but they could leave as quickly as they joined. Because of that, when I think of Hickman's Avengers, there's no set style that I can think of. When I mention Basique's run, you think of Perez, you think about the Ultimates and it's Brian Hitch, and although yeah, stuff like Bendis' New Avengers had a roster of artists, I just wish Hickman's Avengers had a more defined look across the entire run. To contrast that though, I appreciate how it felt like Hickman had a direction that he wanted to go in from the very beginning, and I wasn't too bothered by how many new inclusions there were in this team when it started out. There is a wide cast of characters here, to the point where they need a playbill before every single issue starts. On one hand it's great because if someone doesn't show up for a few issues, you still know how close they are, but on the other hand it would highlight who was going to be a part of an issue before you even started reading it, which could be a detriment to the book because if it only highlighted characters that I didn't really care about, I knew it was going to be a long read as well, and it's going to be a theme throughout this, but sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. And don't get me wrong, I love the idea of having an epic sprawling story, something like the Lord of the Rings for the Avengers, but that isn't achieved by just having a lot of characters. Like Spider-Man is in this and then just disappears without mention. The Fantastic Four become main characters as we ramp up towards the series finishing. Wolverine's here, and you know what, it's actually kinda nice to see him, but it still proves my point. But like I said, there was a lot to love about this series early on. There was a decent sense of humour shown, and I loved the scene where they were recruiting the new guys and knew just the way to persuade each one. And Hickman often has this reputation as being an overly serious writer, so it was fun seeing him inject a few lighter moments to kick things off. As well, the sense of direction was great too. Despite having to juggle both series, it was clear what the goal of each one was, and I wonder if most people also had a favourite. For me, it was New Avengers that I gravitated towards more. The Illuminati has always been a concept that I found interesting, especially because of the tension between the members such as Black Panther and Namor, but they always know that they need to work together for the greater good. And at least up until Infinity, it felt like Hickman refused to cross the wires between the two series. And it added so much variety to this run, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't look forward to the New Avengers issues more. And Avengers books have tried a few different genres over the years, but I liked that Hickman was clear from the beginning that this was first and foremost going to be a sci-fi, and he wasn't afraid to lean heavily into that. His ability to create lore and incorporate different elements at the same time is probably one of the best in the comics industry, but it gets to a point where it feels like a case of throwing a lot of shit at the wall and just hoping that some of it would stick. So it's weird because it does feel like a tale of two stories, which is highlighted more so because it's in two omnibuses, which you can pick up for a little bit less with the discount codes that we've got with the channel's sponsor, Organic Price Books. They've got great packaging, fast shipping, and amazing customer services, and if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get $2 off your order. And if you're ordering 3 or more books and you want them to be delivered together, make sure you use code WOOFWOOF, ship it together for 5% off your entire order. Don't worry, you can just copy and paste them from the description down below, and you can use these codes as many times as you like. What I also enjoyed in the early issues of Avengers was how it took time to tell smaller stories that were contributing little pieces towards the grand scheme, especially when they were leaving the Earth and it was showing how far Cap was willing to go for his goal of expanding the Avengers. I thought it was a solid intro and also helped those newer members assimilate with the older ones. Even if I wasn't a fan of Ex Nihilo, and I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but he somehow became a huge part of this run. But because it was early days and there was still enough going on, I was fine with not being a huge fan of everything, and there was always new Avengers that I could look forward to. And yeah, I haven't done a great job of hiding the fact that that was a title that I preferred pre-Infinity, and just to expand on that, I loved how it made me feel like I was a part of an exclusive secret that I shouldn't know. Having Cap join the Illuminati felt like an exciting move and got me more interested than any of the new members that were joining the regular Avengers. The early new Avengers storyline was also one of those elements that benefited from hindsight. As well, I just love that sense of superiority amongst the group, because for as much as the regular team was going to different planets and taking on different kinds of threats, the Illuminati had one goal and couldn't afford to accept help from anyone. And I think the turning point for that feeling was during Infinity. This was the part of the run I remember getting up to in single issues, but I just didn't enjoy it as much this time around. Thanos in it was great for the moments that we did get to see him, and there were developments that I really enjoyed and how that connected with the Inhumans. But my biggest problem with Hickman is that he thinks an epic scale always needs to be convoluted. He's always telling us what's happening and why it's important, rather than showing us why. He also took Thanos for granted and assumed that the name recognition was enough alone to not need to show us a lot of what he was doing. Don't get me wrong, it can be cool and add to that epic feeling when you get to see so many different stories and reactions, but it feels like there's more of that than there is of the actual Avengers and Thanos. I don't know, maybe that's me being over dramatic, but that's what I mostly remember with this event. It also never really gave me a great sense of time with everything, and it felt like it could jump forward a bit too quick and then spend too long on other things. And I don't know, I'm just disappointed because I remembered being a fan of this. At least that's where the first omnibus goes up to, so it's a nice place to have a bit of a break before you jump into volume 2, and they're mapped out really well, so I would recommend getting them in this format, which if you wanted to pick them up and you're in the EU and you wanted free shipping and free gifts with every order, then the only place that you would need to go is Comics Bugle. I can't recommend them enough, and they've been a great support to this channel, and if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get 3% off all items that aren't already in a sale. Moving into the post-Infinity storylines in the second omnibus, it felt like there was a massive tonal shift, and where a lot of my problems with the run start to become more obvious. The overall storyline became more focused, but as a result it lost sight of what made the two series so distinctive. The Illuminati were as involved in the main book as they were in the New Avengers series. We had another team that was called the New Avengers that besides Spider-Woman and Black Widow, I just didn't care about, and I think the run would have felt cleaner had they relaunched the series after Infinity, but as a single general Marvel book, because at a certain point that feeling of there just being too much stuff is unavoidable. There are so many plot lines that you can't give all of them enough attention. There's so many characters that they're more facilitators of the plot rather than people with their own thoughts and goals. And there wasn't a lot of actual enjoyment that I had the closer this series got to the end. The last arc is called Time Runs Out, and I spent most of it wishing that it would. The timing and pace of it all felt like a problem as well. I wasn't sure if Secret Wars was originally supposed to start a few months earlier than it did, but besides some of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Avengers story and the Cabal storyline, it felt like everyone was just waiting for Secret Wars to happen. And I know this is a beloved run and it probably sounds like I'm just trying to be controversial for the sake of it, so I know there's going to be some hate on this video for not saying that this is the greatest series that's ever existed, even though I'm taking the time to explain why I think that, rather than just being a part of the "it's great because everyone says it's great" crowd. But there is very little in this final arc that feels satisfying. Yeah, we know the incursions are important now, that's been stressed since the first arc of New Avengers, so why not just crack on with it, man? Then different universes were thrown into the mix, which at first I thought was interesting, but Hickman didn't do much more than point to the fact that those universes existed and would somehow be impacted by the incursion. Like, yeah, it's great that that scope is there, but it's what you do with it that really counts for me. But God forbid anyone has a criticism on this run, I must just not be smart enough to understand it, and there's probably 8 other series that I needed to read to have a base level of enjoyment for this. And it's my fault for expecting these 2 omnibuses to have a full story. With this being a longer run, there's so much more I could focus on, but if I'm honest, I forgot about a lot of the plot lines going on in this book after I finished reading it. The main thing that kept me going throughout this was the relationship between Steve and Tony, and thank God this was in here. It was definitely a highlight of the entire series for me, and to give him due credit, it's another example of Hickman being able to sow a seed early early on and have it carry throughout the run. I can't go too in detail about what is the thing that went on between them, but it definitely felt like a betrayal of trust. And Hickman did a great job of reminding us that that had happened. It wasn't just forgotten about, and it will find a way back into the story later on down the line. And what's hardest to accept about that is that Hickman did such a good job of showing them working together, building the Avengers up, having plans to protect the world, but the entire time we knew it wouldn't last. I loved that dramatic irony that was going on in the background, and I wished it could have been fleshed out even more, rather than taking us away in certain issues to give us a story following someone like Smasher. But even that comes with its own downside, because the payoff to the Steve-Tony storyline felt like an afterthought that didn't get to its true end destination. I'll touch on it in the spoiler section, but either way, it could have gone further. I just found this run to be a bit frustrating because the great parts of it were top tier, and there was so much ambition. It felt like it wanted to be an Avengers story like none that had come before it, and then just couldn't stay focused enough on one character or plotline and allowing that to grow into what I feel like it could have been. And at certain stages, it felt like having the Avengers in this was an inconvenience for Hickman and the story that he wanted to tell. So although I enjoyed it in the beginning, towards the end I found myself wondering why he'd throw so many people into this. If I am to find a saving grace for the last part of this run, it was pretty fun seeing how the separate Avengers teams functioned, especially the one that was being led by Steve. Sue Storm was an inclusion that I didn't think would work as well as it did, and everything to do with Namor gave me that sense that it was worth sticking with it. So it's weird because overall there were parts that I definitely enjoyed and would recommend, but others that felt like the same pitfalls that Hickman can often fall victim to. I do get why some people love this though, and I wish I'd have been the same. Maybe if it stuck with what made it so fun in the beginning, I'd be saying something different. But regardless, even if I'd completely hate all of this book, I could still respect the ambition that he's got. And then again, it's kind of an elephant in the room, but the real ending to this run is supposed to be in Secret Wars, which I did review earlier this year, and I have some thoughts on that, but I can't say any more without jumping into spoilers. We're jumping into the spoiler section now, so if you don't want anything major ruined, make sure you skip to the final verdict. The one thing I really want to delve into is the fight with Tony and Cap in the last issue. Firstly, I loved how this had been building from the beginning of New Avengers, found a way to tie in with Original Sin, and was building up to a climax towards the end. But although we got the fight, it was still a bit disappointing because it just got swept under the carpet in time for Secret Wars. But why did I have to spend so much time with Ex Nihilo, the Black Priests, the Gardeners, or whatever they were called? But this, the storyline that felt prepped to explode as soon as it happened, had been marinating across the whole run, was there in the background making every casual scene with Cap and Tony feel tense. That's the storyline that Hickman didn't have enough time to fully explore? Are you kidding me? The moment the Illuminati decided to wipe Steve's mind was the most shocking of this entire run. It proper felt like a ton of bricks had been dropped on me, and I could have gone for an entire series where that's the only thing that's brewing because it was such a shadow over Tony and Steve's relationship. It's even more disappointing because the part of the fight that we did get to see was so cathartic and tense, and the emotions it carried reminded me so much of Civil War, and it felt like that had never gone away for either of them, and they were both just waiting for another opportunity to fight each other. So I just don't get why Hickman didn't give us the fallout of that fight. Secret Wars had been planned for a long while, so there's no chance it just snuck up on him. It was his event! Because I thought he deserved a second chance with Hick Avengers being fresh in my mind, but it couldn't feel more disconnected if it tried. It's literally in a different reality with only a handful of the characters carrying over. As well, I forgot to address it in that video, but Secret Wars is pretty much clickbait. That cover that's pretty much synonymous where the 616 and Ultimate Universe characters are caught up in a battle against each other, the one that was used in most of the promotional material, there is no chance of that happening after issue 1. And I don't get why it pretty much got away with that. Can you imagine if Avengers vs X-Men didn't have the Avengers fighting the X-Men? And I don't know, maybe it's just me dumb reader self wanting to see what was on the front cover, but this all just feels like false advertising to me. This is my final verdict. And Hickman's mark on the Marvel Universe is undeniable. In less than 10 years, he wrote a team-defining book with the Fantastic Four, reshaped the entire multiverse with Secret Wars, and his time on the Avengers is supposed to be the linchpin to it all, but that's not without its hiccups. Across 2 series and 2 events, we're given a grand sci-fi epic that pulls in pretty much all of the major characters from the Marvel Universe, and even brings in multiple timelines the deeper into it that you get. There are definitely highs with the years he spent with the Earth's mightiest heroes, especially in how seeded a lives of the Illuminati was, but it does often fall victim to just having stuff for the sake of it, to the point that when I think back on this run, I'm just left with an overblown, over-explained missed opportunity. There were countless times where I found myself wishing that this would have been more curated, and instead focus on a smaller but more fleshed out cast, and probably instead just focus on the Illuminati, because that side of things was so well written and ticked a lot of the boxes that I had. On top of that, I wish the art could have had a more consistent look, and considering that the majority of people said that the best way to enjoy Secret Wars is to read the 200 or so issues that Hickman wrote for Marvel beforehand, it still felt super disconnected from the Avengers titles beyond the side effects of the incursions. However, I'm not saying it's bad, just so it wasn't the defining run for the Avengers that the wider comic community would have you believe. And then again, if you want a story with a massive roster, a heavy focus on lore, and don't mind being told that things are important rather than being shown, then this would be a top tier run for you that's long enough to get your teeth sunk into. In the wide, diverse world of comics, it's nice that a sci-fi heavy Avengers epic can be at the forefront of Marvel and also steer the direction of the entire universe. So even if it wasn't what I was expecting, it was still fun to watch it unfold. And if you wanted to read any Marvel from the past 10 years, it's pretty much impossible to not get pulled into this run's orbit. But if I had to sum up Jonathan Hickman's run on the Avengers in one sentence, if you love classic sci-fi and want the Marvel version of that, then definitely buy this. Otherwise, you might be better off with a different Avengers run. So that's my review, hopefully you've enjoyed it, but until next time, just make sure that you stay safe, and stay mad all you dogs. Woof woof! See you at the next video.